hearings. First one will be enforcement hearing pursuant to unsafe buildings local law for property located in the town of Diana. The second one will be a public hearing for comments on local law introductory number 2-2019, local law amending local law number 2-2009, and reestablishing the Lewis County Trail System. So we'll start with the unsafe buildings, local law. Is there anyone here that would like to comment on that? I believe Mr. Richard Dowling.
Yes, sir. Sure, I'll be brief, sir. I'm Richard Dowling, Maple Street, Town of Diana, Harrisville. I'm the uncle of the property owner, Mr. Orr, and I'm appearing on his behalf. I've already provided the county attorney's office a copy of my power of attorney to act on his behalf in this matter. I've also met on the site with the code enforcement officer to discuss the scope of the work. I'm simply here as courtesy and also to repeat to you the commitment that I've made to the attorney's office and the code enforcement office that that commitment that the work has begun will be completed to the satisfaction of the code's office. I expect that to be done well before this fall. I thank you for your notice to the family that the sheriff's office has completed, wrapped up their investigation. We really weren't aware of that until just recently that we could go ahead. And that's where we stand. Commitment to do it right. Goes without saying, it'll be done legally according to the law and in close cooperation with the code's office. Welcome any questions.
Mr. Dowling, you're wanting an extension for additional 6 months?
In conversation, I have not formally asked for any extension. In conversation, sort of shrugged their shoulders at the site and said, well, if I need one, I'll ask for it. But my commitment to you is to be done this fall. The building sat for 2 winters. It's not going to sit for another winter. The way it is. No, I'm not asking for any formal extension at this time.
Well,
But should I?
You're out of your time frame, right? Or
No, sir.
You still have how much?
Well, it's in the
Do you
letter.
remember, John?
The letter.
How much time do you guys left?
It generally would be 30 days. If there is a resolution in here tonight where you could extend that time frame, it would be, normally it can go for 60 days. So it's up to the board if they want to extend that time period to Mr. Dowling to get it completed.
Based on this conversation, may I formally ask for 60 days?
I appreciate it. Appreciate you coming and stuff. Though that it needs to be cleaned up, or we'll have to do it for you. You understand?
Understand that. Understand. Your interests are the same as the family's.
Okay. So when we get to the resolution, we may have a little bit of discussion, and we'll go from there. Thank you for coming in. Appreciate it.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there anyone else that would like to comment on that public hearing structure? If not, is there anyone here that would like to comment on local law reestablishing the Lewis County Trail System? If not, we'll leave both of those open for another 30 minutes and we'll move on to privilege of the floor. We have the hospital CEO, Jerry Cater, with us for an update on the Copenhagen Health Clinic. Jerry, if you'd like to make a few comments on that, please.
Sure. So thank you for the opportunity to provide the update. In May of this year, I received notification from the Department of Health that, and the exact language was, Copenhagen site is operating at a level of primary care and not providing only limited services. It does not qualify as a part-time clinic site. Lewis County General Hospital will need to file a certificate of need application to establish this clinic as an extension clinic. In other words, LCGH is not authorized to operate in Copenhagen unless a CON is filed and approved by the Department of Health. As you can imagine, that came as quite a surprise. I have never experienced that sort of thing. You know, my first week on the job, like any CEO, you pull the license, you see what you're licensed for, you sort of compare what's on the license to the reality of the operations, and everything appeared in order. On the license, it made reference to part-time clinic, and we only have one part-time clinic, and that's in Copenhagen. It was part-time because we had a part-time physician who worked 2 days a week, so everything seemed in order. So once I was made aware, I looked in the file, you know, basically went back, and I found paper dating as far back as 1993. And what I gathered by reviewing those files, the presence of a provider in Copenhagen has been inconsistent over that, 2.5 decade period. At times, they were private. At times, they were employed by the hospital. At times, there was no one. In fact, the most stable provider in Copenhagen over the last 2.5 decades was Dr. Brian Shambo. He was there for 8 years. But outside of that window, that was not the case. And in fact, you might recognize that name because now Dr. Shambo is the physician up in Harrisville. So in 2005, the hospital CEO applied for a license for the Copenhagen clinic. At that time, Dr. Shambo was in private practice at that clinic site. So the department will only pay for one license and for one provider and for one owner. So you couldn't have Dr. Shambo have the license for the clinic and then have Lewis County General Hospital own it. So it was denied, and we have a letter. In fact, we did not have a letter on file. We had to request a copy of the letter from the department. So at some point in the next year, Dr. Shambo became employed by the hospital, and then the hospital began billing on his behalf. And that continued up until May, when we were told that we were not the rightful owners of the license to operate the Copenhagen clinic. So at that point, we needed to stop. So the first thing we did was an evaluation of the building, because when you apply for CON, you have to make sure the building you provide services in are up to code. The building is a 1960s modular constructed building, which is a polite way of saying it doesn't meet modern codes. But as you know, codes get grandfathered over time until such time you do a major renovation or repair. So we brought in a group called BCA to do an evaluation of the clinic, and really what we wanted to know is what would it cost to bring the building up to code. And the cost to bring the building up to code through a renovation initiative would be $700,000, which just seems like an awful lot of money for the square footage involved. So then the follow-up question is, well, what if we started from scratch? And starting from scratch would be somewhere between $800,000 and $1 million. And that would be driven by the hazardous waste, the asbestos and those sorts of things. But so that's an awful lot of money as well. So the same month that we were told we weren't licensed for the clinic, the family nurse practitioner who was working our clinic resigned her position. She came from out west, the western part of our country, and had a family emergency and was unable to stay with us. She was brought on to replace Dr. Noam Scott, who was the part-time provider for a number of years. And our goal was, with this family nurse practitioner, to eventually move to 4 days a week. And I think part of the challenge in Copenhagen, in addition to inconsistent provider coverage, is that it was only open 2 days a week. So if you weren't feeling well on Tuesdays and Thursdays, we had you covered. Monday, Wednesday, Friday, not so much. So the goal was to grow the volume, and we had started seeing that with the provider, the family nurse practitioner. We thought within a month we would be going to 3 days a week. So there was a heck of a couple of weeks. Family emergency, nurse practitioner moves back to her home state, and the department tells us we're not licensed. So where do we stand today? Michelle Prince, our Chief Operating Officer, and I have a conference call set up with the Department of Health for next week, and we're actually focusing on the rebuild options for the clinic, as well as, are there opportunities for some grandfathering of certain codes. Now, there are things like handicap accessibility and fire suppression. There's obviously you would not, want to play with that at all. However, I think some of the air handling and some of the kind of other, size requirements for clinics, rooms, I think there may be a legitimate argument to be made for some grandfathering there. So we're just going to talk to the folks, let them know our thinking, and the architect who did the evaluation of the building will participate in that conversation with us. And then in the first week of September, I'm meeting with the lead official at the Department of Health to talk about a grant for Copenhagen to see if we can get some outside support to help with the rebuild or the renovation or whatever it may be. So as part of communicating what's been happening, in late June, I had a meeting with the county manager, Mr. Burns, and the mayor of Copenhagen at the clinic, and reviewed the entire challenge that we're faced with there. And then in the middle of July, I attended the trustees meeting in Copenhagen, so I was able to give them a full briefing and answer their questions. So, they've been wonderful to work with, very understanding, but as you would expect, there's one question. When can we expect the clinic to open? Which is a fair question. Right now, if it's a complete rebuild, I think it'll be upwards of 2 years. If it's a renovation, I think that's a year. The rebuild will require, demolition. It'll stay on the same site, by the way, so it's very close to the center of downtown Copenhagen. But those are the estimates, and in the meantime, we're recruiting for a family practitioner who we would assign with the goal of working in Copenhagen 4 days a week. So those are the moving parts. I've obviously given the Board of Managers the updates since May when we first were made aware of this. So that's where we stand today. We stand committed to providing primary care services in Copenhagen in a modern building that will meet the requirements of the Certificate of Need, and that the people of Copenhagen can feel proud for having in their community. So I didn't spend any time on what happened in 1993 or 2006 because, what is. Most of us weren't anywhere near Copenhagen during that time. I think all we need to understand is what do we got to do moving forward to make clinic services available. So that's kind of where our focus is. Any questions? All right, well, that's a good sign. I either gave you just enough information or I put you to sleep, so I'll let you decide. All right, thank you.
Presentation of communications and notices, please.
Yes, a letter from Lloyd J. Rivers of Glenfield makes a formal request to the Board of Legislators to adopt a local law that would allow off-highway vehicles to be operated on county-owned lands, specifically the Lewis County Trail System. It is his belief that by granting access to these vehicles will allow people access to hard-to-reach natural areas, bring economic benefits to communities serving riders, provide outdoor recreation opportunities for the disabled, senior citizens, and others with mobility limitations. Legislators are all invited to participate in the Village of Copenhagen's parade on August 24 in celebration of their 150th anniversary. And that concludes presentation.
Thank you. Reports of county officers and departments.
Yes, all legislators have received copies of the Lewis County General Hospital's 2018 annual report, the July treasurer's report, highway and solid waste audit reports for July, and minutes of the July 17 Youth Bureau Advisory Board meeting. James Richmeyer has submitted his June Sealer of Weights and Measures activity report that has been placed on file in my office. And that concludes.
Thank you. Reports of standing committees. Ryan, would you like to start off with finance and business?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I do believe that, through the emails and stuff that you've received, that Ryan and Patty have started the budget, hearings with the department heads. I think it was this week you were talked to 10 departments, I think, right?
Actually, 18.
Okay, so it's 8 more than the last I saw the email. Okay, second of all, as you know, Chris Bulio left his last day, I do believe it was last Tuesday, which Chris did a good job the 2 years that he was here, and we hired a new HR director that came from Kraft. Her name is Caitlin Smith. If any of us haven't met Caitlin, she's right out here in the audience. So, we have a few resolutions in the packet, and I'm sure there's going to be discussion on some of them, and that would be all I have, Mr. Chairman.
Questions for Brian? Thank you, Brian. Jerry, General Services Committee.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Do have quite a few resolutions in the package. I know we'll have quite a little bit of discussion now. And we've got a study before, space study and conditions report, and we need to start having meetings and decide what we want to do. So hopefully we can set a meeting this evening or in the near future to get back on track. That's all I have, Mr. Chairman. Thank you.
Questions?
Chair, you have your motion?
What, to set a meeting?
No.
No, the motion.
Oh, yes, I'm sorry. Thank you, Terry. We got sidetracked, apologize. Yeah, I did too. A motion to authorize solid waste director Kip Turk to refill a full-time MEO grade 18 position due to a retirement, and depending on whether the current part-time MEO is scheduled to fill the full-time position. Authorize also to refill part-time MEO. So I make that a motion, Mr. Chairman?
Moved by Jerry, second by Brian. Discussion? All in favor? Opposed? Motion carries.
A motion to authorize Buildings and Grounds Supervisor Matt O'Connor to refill one part-time cleaner at Public Safety Building due to an impending retirement. And I'll make that a motion, Mr. Chairman.
Moved by Jerry, second by John. Discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Carries.
Motion to authorize Sheriff Carpinelli to fill one part-time deputy sheriff for Parks and Recreation. I'll make that one a motion, sir.
Moved by Jerry, second by Brian. Discussion? All in favor? Opposed? Carries.
And a motion to pay Four Corners Trading Post. And Yolan's got some stuff that she needs to
Mr. Chairman, if
fill
I
in.
could just be heard on that before the board votes on that motion?
Do we have the amount of that to be paid?
$9,999.80.
Thank you.
Okay, so Jerry's got a motion on the floor. Do I have a second for that? Brian? Okay, now we're ready for discussion. Joel, if you'd like to make a few
Yes.
comments on that, please.
before the board votes on that, I know there's been quite a bit of discussion about how this all came about. And I just do want to point out to the board that the sheriff, in handling this the way he did, violated two specific parts of our purchase policies in our administrative manual. Specifically, in the administrative manual 404-01, request to purchase equipment. The policy of this board, it states that equipment must be in the approved department budget and its purchase authorized by the county manager before a department may purchase the items. And I would submit to the board that that also means whether or not you contact somebody and place an order. Also, the policy generally states in our procurement policy, it requires municipalities and specifically our departments to obtain bids, verbal quotes or written quotes when, depending upon the amounts that are being expended. This also was not followed. That is also a significant violation of our procurement policy. I will be providing something to the sheriff to indicate to him that he must follow these policies and not place this board and the county in violation of procurement policies. And if he is going to direct any other member of his department to place orders, he needs to make them aware of those policies. In addition, depending upon whether or not this board acts tonight to pay off this bill to Four Corners for the invoice that is outstanding, based upon the fact that they filed a notice of claim against the county for that, I would also be sending to the owner of that business a letter to clarify that he is not to go ahead and place any orders on behalf of any county department or county employee without having a signed, valid, executed purchase order executed by the proper person, and that is our county manager. Thank you.
And the reason I move this motion forward is that we, regardless of our difference or not following policies, the people that do business with us need to be paid. So that's why it's here tonight, to pay our vendors.
Any other comments?
Need a second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Carries.
Thank you. Now I'm done for this time. Thank you, Terry.
Okay, Greg, Health and Human Services Committee.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I don't have any motions or anything at this particular time. I would like to discuss a couple of docket items that were handled at committee, and then one was a docket that was voted down, which was the fiscal manager temporary part-time. This was voted down at committee, and the other was the office specialist, which was tabled at committee, and these were then brought forward by you, Mr. Chairman, even though that goes against our policies in the legislative standing rules. So I would like these items to be, one, to be tabled, and the other to be not voted upon tonight.
They've already been told, Greg.
Okay. Well, that's what I wanted to hear. Thank you. That's all I have for tonight.
Any questions for Greg? County manager report, Ryan.
As Brian mentioned, Patty and I have been busy with the budget. I was just doing the math, Brian. We've met with 18 departments so far, which means we have 9 to go. We still have to work on the fleet budget with enterprise. We've kind of started on that. We have to work on the capital budget, which if you guys can set a couple of those meetings to talk about the building, that would be helpful to shaping our, 5-year capital plan going forward, so that's still very much in the air. We still have to work on our presentation material, PowerPoints, the actual budget document itself, but we're moving right along. So far, so good. Departments, as always in Lewis County, have been phenomenal, very prepared with their material, and very conservative and reasonable with their asks. So I anticipate we should be in good shape going into November for the budget. Another note on that, because inflation throughout New York State is relatively high right now, we have the full 2% tax cap to work within. And since Maple Ridge pilot has been reduced, we actually have additional tax cap we can work with. So we could raise taxes up to 5-point-something%, which I don't anticipate we will do, but you do have the authority to do that this year without going above the tax cap. So we'll obviously have much more discussion on that going into budget season as it heats up this fall. I do want to mention that JCC will be holding an open enrollment session on August 15th from 3 to 7 at our facility in Lewis County. If you show up and you're interested in taking a class, it is automatic enrollment. There's no, qualifying with test scores or, previous experience. If you want to take a class and you're here in Lewis County, we want you to have access to that program, and that is a JCC initiative. So spread the word and hopefully get some people to show up for that. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. Questions for Ryan? Patty, treasurer's report.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. They have their balances. Special legislative contingency is at $96,942. Regular contingency is at $189,475. Capital data processing is at $61,865.71. Capital equipment, county share, $297,867.25. Highway share, $61,351.30. Sales tax to date is at $5,605,505.78, and we are on budget for that. And internal service fund, our fund balance is at $4,852,101.64. And we did have a loss in May. But still, I think the next few months we'll see an increase because July was the increase of 2%. And that's all I have unless there's any questions.
Questions for Patty? Thank you, Patty.
Thank you.
Report of the Finance and Rules Committee per Rule 7.
The Finance and Rules Committee reports they have examined the claims presented for payment in the total amount of $1,450,944.84, and they recommend that they be audited and allowed for the amounts claimed.
Any motion? John, second by Gary. Any discussion? All in favor? Aye. Opposed? Carried.
The first resolution then is to audit and allow those claims for $1,459,44.84.
Moved by Brian, second by Randy. Discussion. Roll call, Terry.
Burns,
Yes.
Chartran,
Yes.
King,
Yes.
Colzer,
Yes.
LaChaux,
Yes.
Lehman,
Yes.
Moser,
Yes.
Osborne,
Yes.
Dahlhoff.
Yes.
We have local law introductory number 2, to amend local law number 2, 2009, and reestablish the Lewis County trail system.
Mr.
We have to
Mr. Chairman,
close
I'll close the
hearing.
public hearing.
Any comments on either one of those issues, the building issue or the Lewis County trail system?
I just have one other comment on the unsafe building hearing. Legislator King, before I told you that there would be a resolution in this packet to finalize that unsafe building matter after this hearing closed, we didn't have it in here knowing that people were going to appear. So what I would request is that the board, or somebody make a motion to allow the owner of the property to have the 60 days to remove and demolish the building and debris at 7864 Marshy Road, and then direct me to submit the appropriate resolution at the September meeting to be in compliance with local law 2-2007.
So moved, Jerry.
I guess so. The only thing I need is the numerics.
Yeah.
Joe,
Yeah.
the 60 days starts when?
Mr. Dowling, is today okay?
Well, there's already a window of opportunity in the letter. I'd simply request 60 days start at the conclusion of that window. And it's,
Well,
As
I
I
don't have the
recall-
letter in front of me.
the letter states that there's a service that must commence within 30 days of the date of the service, and then 60 days, 60 days thereafter, unless for good cause shown, such time should be extended.
So
so
again,
60
if we
days.
started today, it's gonna give you more time, and that's what I've requested the board to move on. That'll give you more time.
So that,
60 days
Less-
from today.
Less time as I'm reading the letter, but I would like 60 days in addition to what's already granted in the letter.
The way I understand the letter, Joe, he had 90 days from total from receipt of that letter. The way I
That's-
just
Yeah,
understood what he read.
I'm sorry I don't have it with me.
That, I have an
If
extra
that's
copy.
okay with the board, that's fine, that's fine.
so that'd give 90 days.
No, 60 on top of it. She's saying another 60.
Okay, so that's gonna put
150
it,
days total.
whatever, so that's gonna put it in what, December?
Start date of that letter. What was the date of the letter?
Well, it's the date of service, which was a couple of days after, I don't know, I
So,
don't have the date of service, but.
can I just
my
suggest, Jerry,
commitment-
that the motion is that he has the 90 days set forth in the letter, and I'll get you a copy of the letter. From service, okay? 90 days from service.
That's already in the,
Yep.
the letter. I'm asking the extra 60 days just as a cushion.
Joan,
My commitment to you is the same that I've already made a couple of times on the seat.
You want to recess to go get the letter?
well, I was gonna suggest, we're in no rush. Why don't we bring a formal resolution on this next, to the September committee meeting? That'll have everything
That's
spelled
fine.
out in it.
That's fine.
That's
September to now is 30 days anyways,
Right.
so. you'll have
The
that.
man has already agreed he's gonna have it done before snowfly. So why are we
I'll just plug it,
reinventing this wheel for this poor
I'll
gentleman?
speak to Mr. Dowling, we'll work out those numbers and submit the resolution with the correct dates next month, if that's okay.
Certainly works for me.
Okay.
I withdraw my motion.
Jerry withdraws his motion.
Thank you, Jerry.
Okay, so, any other comments on this? Hang on a second. If there are no other comments on those two public hearings, we'll now close those public hearings.
Mr. Chairman, I think Randy and John have questions.
So where does this leave this situation? I mean, I guess I missed that.
He, Mr. Dowling is going to do the removals and the demolition at the property. Next month, it'll have the particular order with the dates in it as to when he has to have it completed, otherwise the county will go in and take it over.
I think he's still within his time limits
Yes.
on the original letter,
Yes.
so he's
We're
still,
reinventing the
he's
wheel.
still in the, with the original letter he had, Randy, he's still within that open time on the original letter, so.
Where he could have it
What
completed.
Ryan is suggesting is, allow him to operate under that original letter, and then next month we'll bring a resolution forward,
If he needs it.
identifying, more solid time period.
We weren't gonna do anything in the next 30 days anyway, so let's just move it to next month.
Okay, is that okay, sir?
I'm going to keep on
I
going
know
and
you
doing
are.
what I'm doing.
That's- I appreciate what
it-
you're saying.
It just, for so long, we felt our hands were tied because it was considered a crime scene, and sheriffs took their time and got it done.
Okay.
My commitment's the same as I've already made. If anything, just direct me to do it in coordination with the codes office, and I'll work right with them.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, we're back on the ATV law, right? Any
We are
discussion?
on resolution.
What's that?
We're ready to go forward to act on resolution 240 to adopt the local law. You've closed the public hearing.
Okay.
We all on
Okay.
the same page?
It's the same thing, right?
Yeah.
Just have to go to
So I need a
resolution.
motion. I move that forward. Brett Ryan, second by Gary. Any discussion?
I have a couple questions. I have concerns, not questions. I have concerns with, this is basically opening our trails up to UTVs, correct? That's why we're changing the law. It's ATVs, including UTVs up to 2,000 pounds.
Well, I'm
That's
gonna let
70
Joan
inches.
and Jackie talk to that, but we're not opening all the trails to,
Not all of them, but the trails,
Designated.
the
trails.
designated trails to those that are not registerable, right, correct? They are not registerable in New York. So if they aren't registerable, are they insurable?
Yes.
I mean, so they're gonna insure them even though they don't have a registration?
Right.
The companies, okay, so I have a concern here though, because the state says that they are not registerable. And what happens, Joan, because this is a legal question, what happens if somebody gets injured using one of those on our trail, or they injure somebody else or kill somebody else? Who's held liable? I just wondered if,
They are. It's
Who?
on the application, they sign up, they click off or sign that they understand New York state laws and that they agree that they will have insurance. So
They'll
it's
have
still on their
insurance.
liability.
but if you get the right attorney, that insurance is gonna be, they could come
You
back
get
on us.
anybody, whether that vehicle's registered or not, they can still sue. That doesn't mean that
Well, I
you're
mean, we're
liable.
talking about a motor vehicle law that's being, that could be used against us. I just
You're
wondered,
talking about-
can the county be held responsible for some,
You're responsible if somebody walks on your property. It's not any different.
okay, I just wanna make sure that, because this concerns a lot of taxpayers.
It
That
does.
somebody could come back and sue us, the county of Lewis, and that
They
means
cannot.
all the taxpayers pay that bill.
That's the concern of the anti-ATV is now, Greg, though.
Right, I understand that, but I mean, now we're opening it up. I mean, the ATVs have been, they're all right,
Right, but as long as.
because
we're-
they're
we're not-
registerable.
But we're
These are
not,
not.
we're not condoning them to run on the highways, though.
Right, we're
Yeah.
not doing it, but you know what's gonna happen.
We're only condoning it to run on private property,
Right,
so.
We also require them to reaffirm and check a box when they do their application for a permit that they will follow New York State DOT law, which means they will not be going where they're not supposed to. So it's our local law and it's in our permit.
okay. I just wanna make sure, just to cover the taxpayers. That's who I'm concerned with.
any other comments? All in favor?
Aye.
No, it's a roll call vote,
Oh,
please.
it is?
Burns,
Yes.
Chartran,
Yes.
King,
Yes.
Halsey,
Yes.
LaChose,
Yes.
Lehman,
Yes.
Mosier,
Yes.
Osborne,
Yes.
Dahlhoff.
Yes.
Yep, introductory, number 3, 2019. Local law continuing an additional mortgage tax for mortgages on real property situated in Lewis County. Resolution 241 is to set the public hearing for that local law for September 3rd at 5 o'clock.
Moved by Tom, second by Brian. Any discussion, Gary?
I just had one question. I mean, this is just an extension of the tax we already had. right?
Yes.
This isn't new. It's
Yeah,
just
okay.
continuing what's already present. Okay, thank you.
Any other comments? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Carries.
To transfer funds, buildings and grounds.
Moved by John, second by Ron. Discussion.
It's just being transferred within,
We're creating a new line so that we can track specific expenses at the highway garage.
okay. Thank you.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
Why is it coming from buildings and grounds?
I'm talking about buildings and ground expenses at the highway garage,
Oh, okay.
maintenance expenses.
In favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Carries.
Authorizing intermunicipal agreement, the Village of Copenhagen to administer and enforce local law, use and zoning regulations, and flood damage prevention, administration, and enforcement.
Moved by Ron, second by Jerry. Discussion. All in favor? Opposed? Carries.
Authorizing and designating the Lewis County Priorities Council as part of 2020 Census Complete Count Committee.
Moved by John, second by Greg. Discussion. All in favor? Opposed? Carries.
Authorizing addendum to agreement between Community Services Department and Credo Community Center for Treatment of Addictions.
Moved by Tom, second by Jerry. Discussion. All in favor? Opposed? Carries.
Authorizing Community Services to participate in the Healing Community Study conducted by Columbia University under the National Institute on Drug Abuse grant and funding, and authorizing agreements for the same.
Moved by Jerry, second by John. Discussion.
Who's gonna be giving us updates on this? Who will be like the person in charge at the time?
It'll be under Pat Fraley's department. Her department's gonna administer the grant and work with Columbia University. So it'll be through the Health and Human Services Committee.
Okay.
All in favor? Opposed? Carries.
Authorizing county manager to accept laptops or tablets on behalf of the county to aid in the battle against opioid epidemic and violent death reporting.
Moved by Tom, second by Greg. Discussion. All in favor? Opposed? Carries.
Amending compensation plan with reference to part-time assistant district attorney.
Moved by Jerry, second by Brian. Discussion. All in favor? Opposed? Carries.
Amending compensation plan to create temporary intern assistant district attorney.
Moved by Jerry, second by John. Discussion.
I do have one question. Puts it over 20 hours.
I'm sorry, Jerry, say that again?
Puts it over 20 hours, thresholds under 21, right?
It's only temporary.
What do you mean?
For benefits.
Oh, it's only for 3 weeks though. You gotta work consistently more than 30, yeah.
Okay, thank you.
All in favor? Opposed? Carries.
Authorizing lease agreement, Board of Elections and Transitional Living Services of Northern New York.
Moved by Jerry, second by Ron. Discussion.
Got a question on this for Joan,
Yeah.
because this is, contract. What's minor repairs? We aren't putting a value, expenses pertaining to minor repairs and cleaning services.
There will be, in the contract itself, in the lease agreement itself, there will be a definition of what a minor repair is, and that's usually a dollar amount.
Yeah.
$350 or $500 or something like that.
Because we're paying quite a monthly rate there.
Actually, we're paying less than we were in the prior one.
It should be less. We probably paid their bill.
So how about Joan, I know we had an instance where we had to replace a heat pump, did we last winter.
We didn't replace that though,
Did we do the work though?
no.
Oh, I thought we did, I thought.
I think we helped them because they couldn't get a mechanic over there for
Okay,
a couple days.
Well, then that's what I mean.
But we didn't pay for the equipment and
No,
we still
right,
had to
but
pay a
it was
vendor.
our time that was involved in it.
Yeah, because we didn't wanna close the office, but you're right, we
No.
did spend a little bit, yeah.
That's all on,
That's
this
in
new
the
one, that's all
agreement.
on TLS.
Have we got the similar thing with DMV? Because I mean, I think we put quite a bit of stone down there, increasing that parking lot size.
That may have been on us because we increased the size. But I don't know for sure, I'd have to look back at that.
All in favor? Opposed? Carries.
Authorizing one-time payment and agreement between county and Harrisville Volunteer Fire Department.
Moved by John, second by Ron. Discussion. Jerry.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. You know, we've spent over $1.5 million for all the fire departments in Lewis County helping on the radio system. And, you know, I think we spent that money wisely. This is not in our schedule like people apply for grants at the end of the year budget season. The second thing is that it should be the towns and villages they contract with to pay for their fire equipment, not the county. So I have to recommend my fellow legislators, you vote this down, because we're opening a can of worms. It's going to entitle everybody in the county to do the same thing, so.
All right, Ronnie?
I agree with Jerry and John also with this. If this new pilot agreement that we set up with the community fund, if that ends up happening, that's exactly what that fund is meant for, is for different communities to apply for the monies for that. So in a way that, I mean, there is going to be tax dollars available.
I thought that was for economic
Well, I
stimulation.
think it's for.
So that's for any, that.
It would be for
Path
something
anything.
like that, it's been defined as
It's
something
been
like that.
defined as something like that too, so.
So for a fire truck.
No, it didn't say specifically a fire truck, but for health in general. for
But has that been
some
voted,
reasons.
has that been confirmed that that's going through?
No, I'm just saying if that comes.
Because I still feel that that's not the appropriate way to use, to handle a pilot agreement. The pilot agreement should stay the way it's been in the past. The county receives a chunk of that money, and if we decide to send it to the municipalities, then that's what we do, and we handle all the taxes for that. So I think that whole IDA plan was not appropriate.
I do think there's more discussion to be had there.
Yeah.
I was just making the comment that if that comes.
Right, well, that's part of the discussion, we need to continue to discuss that, because we are the ones that really should make that decision, not the IDA board, I believe. So, if we go through with this though, let everybody, all the other volunteer fire departments get $2,000?
Well, or else anyone.
My point with this was, oh, sorry, Brian.
No, I was just gonna say, I think with this, if we do this, Greg, anytime a department asks for up to $2,000 for equipment or anything, we have to be willing to give it to everyone, we gotta be. So,
it's
and
hard.
moving forward, next year, if 4 other departments want a brand new pumper, you're gonna hand out $8,000.
It's not against anybody,
Yeah,
but
so-
to say all the fire departments and EMS services in the county and the tax jurisdictions of these places, we've turned around and used windmill money. And I think the cheapest grant, and I can look them all up and show them to you, the cheapest one that we put out for a fire department was $89,000 in the EMS service. So the towns would not have to buy that at the fire department. So I think personally, they ought to be able to come up with that $2,000, seeing we put so much in it already. That's where I'm coming from, it's not personal. And it should be applied for a budget time, not in the middle of the year, so.
It's hard for them.
John, any comments?
Yeah, what I was looking at, and I told Brian this, is, doing this on a rotating basis. Have Brian set up all the fire departments and EMSs, and just go down every year. I think it's a very good public relation thing for the board. And need to, limit $2,000 this year hairstyle, go right now South Dakota down through. It sure does look nice for the taxpayer to see they're getting something back.
They did. They got $1.5 million.
And a lot of people didn't want it, so I don't care, Jerry. That's my opinion.
That's your opinion.
That's
fine.
right.
Any other discussion? All in favor?
Right.
Opposed? So Jerry and Brian opposed, and motion carries.
Resolution to appropriate funds, county route over Moose Creek.
Moved by Randy, second by Greg. Discussion? All in favor? Opposed? Carries.
Resolution to close Blue Street over Whetstone Creek account.
Moved by Tom, second by Jerry. Discussion? Dick?
I was dreaming, I think, when I read this through, but just so everybody doesn't think we're closing, we're not, this is closing out a contract. I read it twice before I picked it up.
Oh, you just popped my bubble.
Yeah.
That's a lot of money for a new bridge just to close it.
Yeah.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Carries.
Authorizing extension of shared services agreement with New York State DOT.
Moved by Jerry, second by Ron. Discussion. All in favor? Opposed? Carried.
Transfer funds, Highway Department.
Moved by Greg, second by Jerry. Discussion. All in favor? Opposed? Carries.
Amended compensation plan with reference to Lewis County General Hospital.
Moved by Dick, second by Tom. Discussion. All in favor? Opposed? Carries.
Number 257 has been withdrawn. 258 is amending compensation plan to authorize reclassification of positions in Community Services and Human Resources Department.
Moved by, somebody like to move this? Dick,
Find it.
second by Tom. Discussion. All in favor? Opposed? You're opposed, Jerry?
Yes.
So Jerry opposed, motion carries.
Authorizing planning department to issue requests for proposals for consultant to assist with the county agricultural and farmland protection plan.
Moved by Jerry, second by Brian. Discussion. All in favor? Opposed? Carries.
Authorizing agreement between probation and Mary Lynn Fazier to provide interpretation services.
Mary
Fager.
who? Fager.
Moved by Tom, second by Ron. Discussion. All in favor? Opposed? Carries.
Authorizing agreement with New York State Division of Criminal Justice Services Probation Department Raise the Age Plan.
Moved by Jerry, second by John. Discussion.
If I can make a note, Mr. Chairman, this was the 100% reimbursable state program, Raise the Age. Our total budget boiled down to $3,009.
Moved by Brooks. All in favor? Opposed? Carries. Lost track, sorry.
Amend procurement policy and appoint county manager as sole responsible purchaser.
Moved by Ron, second by Tom. Discussion. Dick?
Yeah, the only thing I can see here, when you have just one, you get somebody that gets 2, 3, 4 weeks of vacation or sick leave combined and everything like that, I would suggest there be like an alternate or something so that you can cover unforeseen, and I would suggest that be the chairman of the board of legislators.
Isn't that, aren't you already authorized then for that?
Really no.
This says sole responsible purchaser,
Yeah.
that's why I'm asking the question.
The way we currently do it is, I have an iPad that has the Munis system on it, and I can approve it no matter where I am, but you're right, Dick, I mean, according to this, I think it would be a problem to have the chairman of the board. I mean, I think if he called up and told us to approve something, we'd do it, but it depends on.
Just offer it for a thought, so that we don't get much.
You want to make an amendment to that?
Yes, I would.
Dick would like to amend it as the chairman of the board of legislators, the
Alternate?
alternate.
Yeah, so that the county manager does most, if he's around, he does.
If he's around.
Yeah. But with cell phones and stuff, sometimes you go where you can't be reached.
Well, you could be in a coma somewhere too.
No, let's not wish that.
In your dreams, Greg.
That may not be in my dreams.
I need a second.
All right, I need a second, Tom. Do we have any
I think that's
discussion?
workplace harassment, isn't it?
Violence.
All in favor of the amendment? Opposed? Amendment carries. Now we're back to the resolution. Is there any further discussion on the resolution as amended? All in favor? Opposed? Carries.
Approving agreement between Public Health and Health Research Incorporated.
Moved by John, second by Randy. Discussion? All in favor? Opposed? Carries.
An agreement between Public Health and Physical Powers for professional development designed to increase physical activity throughout the school day.
Moved by Ron, second by Greg. Discussion? All in favor? Opposed? Carries.
To transfer funds, Public Health.
Moved by Jerry, second by Randy. Discussion? All in favor? Opposed? Carries.
Authorizing agreement between Office of Real Property Tax Services and Systems East.
Moved by Jerry, second by Randy. Discussion? All in favor? Opposed? Carries.
Marking the 50-year anniversary of Retired Public Employees Association.
Moved by Jerry, second by Greg. Discussion? All in favor? Opposed? Carried.
Authorizing amendment to contract between the sheriff and Fort Drum to confine military pre-trial and post-trial soldiers.
Moved by Jerry, second by Tom. Discussion?
Yeah,
Yes,
there's
Ryan?
a reduction in the line item in the budget, right?
Kind of. So this is actually an amendment to our 2018 agreement. So we didn't use all the money that they sent to us in 2018, but in 2019 so far, we have used most of the contract. So we're adjusting 18, and we'll end up keeping most of what they gave us in 18 for 19, so it's gonna about be a wash.
But had anybody?
We've had some, yeah, this year.
Well, it looked like there was nothing in that.
I talked to the lieutenant at the jail today to get a better understanding on this, and he said that they have had some. I mean, you're right, their outboarding revenue is not great, but they do have some.
Okay, thank you.
So those few must have been from Fort Drum, I would assume.
So they don't pay per incident when they're in our facility, they pay a lump sum up front to cover
No, we get it as they,
as they
they're
come.
there.
Okay.
Yeah, they must have overpaid in 18.
Okay, okay.
I'm
That's
not
what I was
positive of
trying-
the
okay.
details, but they gave us too much in 18.
Because by the looks of this, the way it reads, it looks like that we got a lump sum, and the contract was that lump sum, and we're gonna
Yeah,
reduce it.
that's the way the lieutenant made it sound as well, but I'm not quite sure the mechanics of that.
I thought we got paid so much per day when they're here.
Right.
for, I mean, that's for Drum and now other inmates from other towns.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Carries.
Authorizing agreement extension for SRO for the South Louis Central School District.
Moved by Jerry, second by Tom. Discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Carries.
Authorizing agreement with New York State Housing Trust Fund Corporation.
Moved by Ron, second by Tom. Discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Carries.
Authorizing subrecipient agreement between the county and Snowbelt Housing Company.
Moved by Dick, second by John. Discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Carries.
Authorizing discharge of mortgage, Austin's and Monets.
Moved by Randy, second by Dick. Discussion? All in favor? Opposed? Carries.
Agreement between DSS and Multicultural Association.
Moved by Jerry, second by John. Discussion? All in favor? Opposed? Carries.
To appropriate funds for social services.
Moved by Greg, second by Dick. Discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Carries.
Is Brian opposed?
Sorry.
Number 275 has been withdrawn. 276, amending compensation plan to create temporary position, Department of Social Services.
Moved by Greg, second by John. Discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Carries.
Amending compensation plan of the County of Lewis authorizing creation of temporary positions.
Moved by
This
That
one
one,
was supposed to be pulled.
Jerry, you want that one withdrawn
That was
also?
supposed to be.
yes, withdraw that one.
Okay.
Yeah, you confused with the next one.
Okay, number 278 has been withdrawn. 279, rescind resolution number 157, social services.
Moved by Gary, second by John. Discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Carries.
Transfer funds, social services.
Moved by Gary, second by Greg. Discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries.
To appropriate funds, solid waste department.
Moved by Gary, second by Tom. Discussion?
What's miscellaneous cover?
So, two things happening. One is that our recycling costs are increasing, as we know. We've been tracking that every month. So we need to increase that line item. The other good news is that the Development Authority has increased their subsidy to us this year to 15 cents per ton, from 10 to 15. So we can actually use some of that additional revenue to cover the loss. So we're just adjusting the budget to balance that, basically.
Thank you.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Carries.
Amending compensation plan to authorize position reclassification, solid waste department.
Moved by Tom, second by Jerry. Discussion?
Just want to make sure. So he's staying in his position that he's doing now as the truck driver, and he's just taking on the title of being a supervisor also. It's going to be a working supervisor, correct?
Half correct. He's going to be the working supervisor. He's not going to be driving the truck anymore. He's going to be taking Kip's job as the man on site, kind of directing things when the director is doing budget or over here at the courthouse. So kind of the lead first worker.
So then we're backfilling the position he's leaving in, and then we have to backfill that position.
Which
Plus
is
we have some, well, was that one that we did for the retirement, one of the other truck drivers that's retiring, or is that all to do with this? See, you're talking two separate things here, I think.
no, that's for this.
Okay, because it said retiring truck,
Yeah, it should be.
okay.
The director retired, and then
Yeah,
everything
yeah,
to
it's
domino.
just a line of progression. Okay.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Carries.
Appointing members to Traffic Safety Board.
Moved by Dick, second by Tom, discussion. All in favor? Opposed? Carries.
Rescind resolution number 206, 2019, workforce development.
Moved by Tom, second by Greg, discussion. All in favor? Opposed? Carries.
To appropriate funds, Workforce Innovation and Opportunity Act.
Moved by Ron, second by Jerry, discussion.
What is this in terms I can understand? I'm not sure I know what this is.
This is our WIO funding that we partner with Jefferson County Workplace for. This is additional revenue that's coming in to fund that program. We don't budget for it, we appropriate it as it comes in. Is that right, Patty?
Okay, and where's the money coming from?
New York State.
Jefferson County or
Yeah.
flow through?
Right,
Jefferson County
it's a
flow
flow through from, it's actually
State to
federal,
Jefferson
it's
goes.
federal money.
Federal is Jefferson.
Right, federal gives it to Jefferson County, and then Jefferson County, divvies it up
Sure.
between the other counties.
Very good, thanks.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Carries.
To transfer funds, Workforce Investment Opportunity Act.
Moved by John, second by Greg, discussion.
This is just more of the same? Okay.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Carries.
Resolution number 287, adopting management salary plan, and implementing the changes to salary structure for the county non-union management employees.
Moved by anyone like to move it? Jerry? Second by
I'll second it, but I've discussion.
Brian, okay. Discussion?
I would actually like to table this until the committee can go over some things. I don't think that we should approve this or any type of salary increase until we come up with a definite procedure on how we're gonna do evaluations and stuff. So I think that they go hand in hand together before we pass anything.
You're moving the table. Does he need a second on that, Joe?
I think so.
Second by Dick, so motion is tabled. Resolution is tabled.
Now, we can work on this, Joan, even though we tabled the motion?
Work on it meaning what? Have discussion?
Like Brian said, yeah, have some more discussion on it. In our
Tonight?
meetings? No, in our committee meetings?
Yes, of
Yeah,
course.
okay, good. Thank you.
I mean, it'd be helpful for us to have some additional feedback of what you guys are looking for, because, I mean, we've been a committee twice with this, so if there's some other things you're looking for, we'd be happy to prepare.
Well, the salary schedule, I think we've had most of the talking about, right? I think, like I talked to you earlier today, I just think that we need something set in stone how we would do these evaluations where everyone's on board with it. So,
The evaluations for management employees.
yeah, for the work along with this, because this was supposed to be in our discussions, these steps were supposed to be done through evaluations, through merit base.
Right.
So I just think we need to have a little more discussion on how we're gonna go about doing the evaluations and stuff, so. And have that set in stone where everyone knows what's going on, so.
And
So we have made some progress on that front, Chris, and not recently, but in the last 2 years, we've uniformed, added some uniformity to our evaluation process where every employee in the county is evaluated at the same time, at the same month. So everyone's done in October, and everyone is done using the same form. So that is different from the past, where everyone was done on their anniversary and dependent on the department. So we've made some progress.
Right, on that we have, but I still, you and I discussed this earlier today, I think everyone needs to have some input on how, if you want individuals to be doing it, or if you want to set up a team of people, a team, 2 or 3 people to do evaluations. I just think that that's something everyone needs to discuss. So.
And with Liz, and it never got done, it's supposed to be performance based. So it's got dropped, so that's something on top of.
I think the last 3 years, well, my first year, I was only for 6 months, we did self-evaluations, but the last 2 have been performance-based evaluations, same form. But, I mean, I have no problem discussing it further.
Okay,
Well,
so
we tabled it, I mean,
we tabled it, we'll
it's
take-
not like it's gonna go into effect right now anyways.
Yeah, you can go back to committee for discussion.
Is that it?
288, authorizing agreement and acceptance of grant award from Division of Homeland Security for law enforcement operations at mow-down events.
Moved by Jerry, second by Tom. Discussion.
I'd like to have a little discussion here. Here we go. Nobody knew anything about applying for this grant. It's never approved by the board or committee and stuff like that. And we're kind of between a damn rock and a hard spot. So here we go again, but I'm afraid they might lose it if we frog around. So the usual process is come to us, has to apply for the grant and stuff, so that's all I got to say, but we gotta stop that.
Any further comments? All in favor? Opposed? Carried.
Appropriate the funds for the mow-down grant.
Moved by Randy, second by John. Discussion. All in favor? Everybody in favor?
So much
Opposed? Motion carries.
To transfer funds villages in Lewis County.
Moved by Brian, second by Greg. Discussion. All in favor? Opposed? Carries.
Authorizing road agreement between county and towns of Lavelle and Martinsburg for Roaring Brook Wind Farm.
Moved by John, second by Jerry. Discussion.
This case, the same as the other agreement with Deer River.
Yes, it is.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Carried. Do we have any other business?
One thing, Mr. Chairman, we withdrew Resolution 277, which was tabled by the Health and Human Services Committee for an office specialist, temporary full-time. He begins September, so if we review this again through the cycle and then try to fill the position, we're going to be just a little bit behind with the heat. We do have our Commissioner of Social Services that's here this evening. Could we engage her about that?
Gator. That's why we tabled it, right? I told you that before. Now you're just trying to push the issue forward again after it's already been tabled. I really don't appreciate that either.
I thought we tabled it to hear from the Commissioner.
Just to clear that up, Greg, a little bit. There was a legislator that voted in favor of doing that. He was unavailable on vacation So Terry asked if I would put my name on to bring it to the floor. I did so, but I told him tonight because there was so much pushback on it. We can take it back to the committee, we can have discussion on it next time, and the committee can take care of it.
We didn't table the whole resolution.
No, we only
We only-
tabled his office specialist.
All Greg asked to table at that committee, if I remember right, was the office specialist. It wasn't the two heat workers.
Right, so those
They
are.
went through, didn't
Yeah,
they?
they went through.
They went through.
Right, so that we're only talking one individual. I understand
And I
the
believe this
urgency
is-
if it was all four of them, but we're only talking one person right now, so.
Well, you can take it back to the committee and have further discussion. Just couldn't. Any other business? And one other point, Greg, I believe any legislator can bring any resolution forward if he so chooses. In the rules.
If you wanna read the standard rules again, you might wanna check that. I do believe, it says only the resolutions receiving a majority vote of the committee shall be forwarded for action by the board at the next scheduled board meeting. It is under committees, section D. Right there, and it's the recent one, July 2nd, 2019.
Unless it got removed, it's in there that any legislator can bring a resolution forward. Is there any other business? We're adjourned.
I need a motion.